Yo, yo, yo. What it do, chicken stew family? Bear with a brother while I adjust this audio real quick. I want y'all to hear me loud and clear. Cause we finna drop a bomb tonight. I didn't even know up until probably like the last 15 minutes that yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. I knew it was along the lines of this week, this month, something who I don't keep track. You know, I'll be losing track every now and then. All the stuff that go on in my brain, it be hard. Real ADHDers know what the hell I'm talking about. So with that being said, in today's video, I'm gonna give folks a little background on some of these slaves working on the plantations in the West Indies. Who they were. I mean, who were they? Who were these slaves working on the plantations in the West Indies? If somebody asked you today, what race were the slaves working on the plantations in the West Indies in the 1500s? What would you say? Black from where? Where did the slaves come from? Don't they say Africa? All right, so with that being said, the whole point of that right now is for people to understand, man. There's a big misconception with the belief that most black Negro slaves came over here 800 deep on a slave ship to the Americas. What we learning in the Coppercolor University is that is not true. I'm arguing with somebody on TikTok about that right now because I introduced the growth of watermelons in South Carolina, and they trying to debunk that, y'all. But it is what it is, man. Anything to take away from the true identity of these folks. They did not come from Africa. They came directly from several places in Europe that you would probably not even expect. Right? Hence the wardrobe of the folks in the photo before you. Now, with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe, man. Click that notification bell. Stay up to date on all content. Stay plugged in like an extension cord, because we about to go crazy. Now, real quick, right? I want to introduce a couple books to the folks. One that I'm actually actively reading right now, and another one that I'm going to go into eventually. And these are, well, the first book is Scottish Colonial Schemes, 1620 to 1686. And the second one is Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. Right? Wagwan, all my yardies them. Author of Hebrewisms of West Africa, Whisperings of the Caribbean, and etc. Some of the works that the infamous Joseph J. Williams have worked on so far, the author of the book. This the one we gonna be reading today. This the one that's gonna really give us some heat. But before I even get into all of that, just to follow the timeline on why I'm getting into this stuff, I did 3 videos. One about the language of the South Carolina Indians and how the Muskogee dialect connects to Hebrew. One about the Huguenot migration into America, the French Huguenots in South Carolina. That one is extremely important. And then the third one is a physical description of the South Carolina Indians and the truth behind Oyatunji African Village in Charlestown, South Carolina. Right? They built the African village in the 1960s, 60s, 70s, one of them. And started telling everybody that, you know, got involved with it, that they were Yoruba. And we learned that ain't even true. right? Because the physical description tells us all we need to know about the colors of these people, the living, the habits, right? The customs. It all translates into black people in America today. So that one, right? All three of those videos right there will give you some kind of understanding on why we going into these two. So for starters, in the 1600s, during Cromwell's reign, Oliver Cromwell's reign, 1500s, one of the two, there was a point in time where you had Irish folks, men and women, being prosecuted for the same reasons that the Huguenots were being prosecuted in France, and being sent to work on the plantations here in America, starting with Barbados. Right? And what do we know about Barbados? Well, whatever came from Barbados went directly to South Carolina. Right? Look, check this part. We went over this. Indian slavery in South Carolina. And just this sentence alone, these 2-3 sentences alone, it says the founders of South Carolina were motivated differently. Most of them came from Barbados to make money. Right. And then in addition to that, we know that a lot of these Negro slave owners, they had homes in South Carolina. Antonio Johnson being one of the most infamous ones. He came directly from Barbados, but people will have this claim that he was African. But I don't know any Africans that's named Antonio. Why that's important? Well, names mean everything in these situations, right? Because they're passed down. Not everything has been given to us by the slave master. The slave owner couldn't have gotten his name from the slave master. His wealth was passed down. He either came over here into America as an indentured servant or was a descendant of a wealthy person. Right, that's fact right there. Straight fact. And y'all can actually go research that or check my old videos to kind of gain some more understanding of that. Right? They went directly to South Carolina, these folks in Barbados. Right? Check this out. The closing of colonial markets placed another brake on the continuation of Indian slavery. A large percentage of Indians enslaved in Virginia had been transported to other North American colonies or to the West Indies. Although the Tuscarora petition to Pennsylvania did not accomplish its desired purpose, it did produce a related result. Fearing the uprising among their own Indians, the Pennsylvania Council legislated against the importation of Indian slaves and other colonies. Both Jamaica and Barbados followed suit. Why does this connect? You had slaves being transported from Jamaica and Barbados back and forth. They were both known to be hubs, right? Ports, big ports where these slaves were being captured and sent to work in different plantations all over the Caribbean islands or the Americas. Check this part right here. This was in chapter 2, Indian slavery in South Carolina. Of the 13 original English colonies in North America, South Carolina enslaved the most Indians. South Carolina also emerged as the only colony with more black slaves than white settlers. Rewind. They enslaved the most Indians. Then they continue to tell us that they had more black slaves than white settlers. So if they enslaved most of the Indians and had more black slaves, then what does that make the Indians? Right, connecting the dots early. From its beginning, South Carolina evolved as a society dominated by slavery. Several elements in the birth of South Carolina accounted for this early dependence on slave labor. The colonization of South Carolina by residents of Barbados. Folks was in Barbados picking up and setting up shop in South Carolina. These same people are the Huguenots and the Black Irish and the Black Scots and all of these other Negroes from Europe who were coming over here as indentured servants. And we're going to get into that at the end of this video. Give y'all a little explanation onto what I mean by that. More backdrop onto these Huguenots, right? You had many different Huguenot families coming to the West Indies. You had a family, the guy name was Daniel Messinard. They were fugitives and they made their way to Amsterdam, thence to the island of Martinique in the West Indies, and then finally to New York, where Dubois soon died afterwards. So this person, the family they talking about, last name, Jacques Dubois. Right, they went to the West Indies first, then came to America. So a lot of them were already sliding that way, these Negro families from Europe, and setting up shop on the Caribbean islands. This says 1681, 1686. See, some folks try to tell me that the Spanish brought African slaves with them, but that's not entirely true either, because that does not give us an explanation onto why the people coming over here are described as Moors and indentured servants and passengers throughout these ship manifests. Not slaves, servants and passengers. I mean, wouldn't there be a big difference between calling someone a servant or a slave? Like, you are a slave to me, and then you are a servant to me. It gives like a very, very distinct, differentiated meaning when you're talking about the two. More or less. I'm about to go back into it. So with that being said, we get an understanding now of these people in Barbados, where they was going to in America, who they are. Like, who are they? Sorry, who are they? These Huguenot European families. Well, in Scottish colonial scheme 1620-1686, in chapter 1, they tell us that these people, right, were Irishmen and Scottishmen immigrating to Barbados, right, running away from their hometown. Let's see what it says, man. Let's get into it. So in the summer of 1632, the Chevalier de Razilly had anchored off the fort of the Scots, had built on the western shore of Port Royal. What? Port Royal? That's in South Carolina. So that's a Scottish settlement. Let's continue. And presented the commission signed by the British ambassador at Paris, with which authorized the surrender of the colony. Fully half a century was to elapse ere other systematic. Hold up, rewind, because they're getting into this European dialect stuff. We're going to have to take our time. So fully half a century was to elapse here other systematic Scottish efforts should be made to establish a settlement in North America. It was half a century crowded with the stirring and critical movements in Scottish history. The National Covenant and the Bishops' Wars, the Solemn League and Covenant, Dunbar and Worcester, Rullion, Green, Drumclog, and Bothwell Brig. It was upon a weary and sorry racked Scotland that the Revolution settlement cast its anodyne of uneasy peace. A Scotland that had little leisure and little energy to spare for the planning of colonial schemes. So pause. How many people knew that Port Royal was originally a Scottish settlement that was surrendered to the British? Hold up. Big drop. Not established by the English, established by the Scottish, but surrendered to the Brits. That's a big drop right there, right? So that was originally a Scottish colony, and it was took over, right? So Negroes settled there first. That's what I want people to understand. Let's continue. It is, however, in the controversies of those unquiet years of Scottish history that we find the motives that guided the Scots who in 1684 sought to establish the Presbyterian colony of Stewartstown in South Carolina, and also, to a considerable extent, the Scots who few years earlier had interested themselves in the Quaker Scottish settlement of East New Jersey. Oh, look, we got Quaker Moors, Presbyterians, anything but Catholic, though. Apart, however, from the influence they exerted on these later schemes, those troubled years of Scottish history are of interest in the general history of Scottish immigration. The troubles of these times cast many an unfortunate Scot ashore in the New World. The troubles of these times cast many of these unfortunate folks into the New World. What does that mean? Well, because the beef they was having in Europe, a lot of these people picked up and made their way over here to America. And the conditioning differing little, if at all, from that of the Negro slaves who toiled in the tobacco and the sugar plantations. This enforced migration was due to two main causes. In the first place, many Scots who fell into the hands of Oliver Cromwell, after Dunbar and Worcester were transported to the plantations. Say what? Scottish folks being transported to the plantations to British or English colonies here in the Americas, Barbados and South Carolina being two of them. Oh yeah, we going crazy now. In October 1651, for example, the Council of State directed the Committee for Prisoners to grant a license for transporting some Scots prisoners to the Bermudas upon the usual security. Such treatment was in general accord with the Cromwellian attitude towards unruly men. A terrible protector, this, no getting of him overset. He has the ringleaders all in his hand, in prison or still at large. As they love their estates and their life, let them be quiet. He can take your estate. Is there not proof enough to take your head if he pleases? Talking about Oliver Cromwell. He dislikes shedding blood, but is very apt to Barbados. An unruly man has sent and sent us by hundreds to Barbados, so that we have made an active verb of it. Barbados, you. What? I'm going to Barbados, you. Send you to Barbados. That was a thing over there in Ireland under the Cromwellian dictatorship, Oliver Cromwell. By the way, he could have been a black man himself, but we're going to try to get into that a little bit later. In September 1655, the Council of State directed the commissions of Admiralty to give orders for the English, Scot, and Irish and Dutch mariners, prisoners in the castle of Plymouth, not though fit to be tried for their lives, to be sent to Barbados. 9 months later, the Council of State were arranging for the transportation of 1,200 men from Knockfergus in Ireland to Port Patrick in Scotland to Jamaica. And this is when we go into the next joint. You see how these things transition? Like, I'm that nigga, and I want y'all to say it with me. I ain't gonna be too cocky. I ain't gonna toot my own horn, but I'm just gonna say, don't say I told you so. Right? This is coming from official documents, right? You can go if you want. Listen, man, we about to throw the subscription out there real soon, and y'all can subscribe to the channel And I'll personally like give y'all these books annotated, notes on the side, little jokes, all of that stuff, things that'll keep you entertained while you're actually reading these books. Right, but look, we see they was sending folks Barbados, Jamaica. We got the West Indies in the building, man. Scottish, Irish folks, Jamaicans. This is where patois gets his origins from. This broken English. Right, this is why sea moss became a thing in the Caribbean islands. Right, people forget that before the word sea moss in the actual term, there's the word Irish in front of it. It's Irish sea moss. It comes from Ireland. Right, the shores of Ireland. It migrated with the people. And it was introduced and assimilated into the new culture that we now see that's in Jamaica till this day. All right, it even made its way over here to America because of our assimilation with West Indian people. All right, how beautiful is that? Got to give many thanks to them, because without them, there's a lot of stuff we won't have. And these exchanges of customs and stuff been things that have been happening for like years, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So yeah, let's continue. So yeah, a generation later, one of these exiles was encountered by the Scots settlers in East New Jersey. I am now drinking to one of them, our countryman who was sent away by Cromwell to New England, a slave from Dunbar, now living in Woodbridge like a Scots laird, wishes his countrymen in his native soil very well, though he never intends to see it. After the restoration, the Cromwellian tradition of the disciplinary effectiveness of exile was continued. To the Scots Privy Council, banishment to the plantations suggested itself as a simple and effective procedure for ridding the country of recalcitrant Presbyterians. Right, they was trying to pack up the Presbyterians. These folks was Catholics too. Cromwell in them. Right, another get down or lay down situation. The practice, which when suggested by James I had evoked the protest of the Scots Privy Council, was freely employed by the Privy Councillors who governed Scotland on behalf of Charles II. The Covenanters sentenced to banishment were carried overseas by merchant ships whose masters gave bond of 1,000 merks for each prisoner, to the effect that the prisoner would be duly transported and the certificate of landing would be obtained under the hand of the governor of the colony to which the prisoners had been taken. These are your slaves on the ships, man. A bunch of yachty Irishmen. Right? The real wagwans. That's the fact right there. This is facts. This is going back to 1600s. So I dare somebody now pull up a slave ship that shows us these Africans traveling to the Americas. I just want somebody to do it, please, because I have not found one yet. All I see is a point in time when they were transporting Moors, straight up Moors, Hebrews, Israelites, Jews, Muslims, Presbyterians, Huguenots. Right, these Presbyterians ended up becoming Maroons. Right, this is how deep this stuff goes. Queen Anne and them, they're gonna say she African too. Show us the birthplace. Right. It's nothing that people could say when it comes to this type of shit, because they give us the facts right in front of our face. Scottish and Irish folks being sent to Barbados and Jamaica. And what was happening with these people in Barbados? They were coming to South Carolina, establishing colonies in the Americas. Again, now we going into to some real smoke. So this for all of the yardies, for real, right? Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. Let's continue. And shout out to homeboy on the picture, right? This is the typical Black Irishman in Jamaica. They're gonna say this is an African though. How so? How so? How so? Let's check out the introduction. Visitors to Jamaica and the British West Indies frequently remark a seemingly anomaly. And even the remotest sections of the bush and among the darkest of the Negroes who clearly trace their ancestry back to the earliest slaves from Africa, they will find distinctively Irish names so common that in an unguarded moment they are apt to give flight to the imagination and claim that they have actually encountered a touch of the brogue. Oh shit, excuse my French. These Africans got Irish names. Oh, very interesting. A few years ago, in one school in Kingston might be found Burke, Collins, Mackey, McDermott, McKeon, and Walsh, and with one exception, the last named who was a dusky brown. They were, of all appearances, full-blooded Negroes. In a single classroom of another school, there were Collins, Kennedy, McCormick, and O'Hare. And here again, in one case, did the features of complexion indicate any infusion of Caucasian blood. Although this one too was as black as the rest. Come on. Right? Perhaps one of the names most frequently met with throughout the island is that of Burke. In some few instances, it is true, the name itself may be a corruption of that of the Haitian refugees, Dubourg, who came to Jamaica in the 18th century, at the time of the Haitian uprising. Right, so you had Haitians going into Jamaica. Right, these folks, they were what they was, right? These was French Indians, Spanish Indians, right? Africans, and many different peoples. Right, with many different backgrounds. But Dubourg, that's a French name. Dubourg is a French name. So we have Frenchmen going to Jamaica. And the names being anglicized or Englishized to Burke, Dubourg, Burke. The usual explanation given for the presence of Irish names is, of course, that the slaves of former days were generally called by a family name of the master. But in the case of Burke, at least we do not find a single planter of that name among the early records of Jamaica. A single planter. This was a settler, a settling family, not a planting family. A settling, right? Planting family means that they were making money off their crops, and the only people that could work the crops were slaves, right, at the time. But no, this was family. Straight up. No slaves, no slave owner. Certainly, the survey of the year 1670 shows that at the time, not 1 acre of land was owned by anyone named Burke. And the same may be said in the case of most of the Irish names we encounter today among the Negroes of the island. They own no land. Why is that? Well, they were slaves. These were the slaves. Right? The purpose then of the present writer is to find a solution to the riddle, whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. And the answer, briefly summarized, lends itself to a threefold division. From Ireland, through Barbados, to Jamaica. And that's the 3 parts of this book, right? That's going to be in 3 parts. And as we go through the first part, we about to learn a lot. So check this out. This is from Ireland. We about to learn what was happening in Ireland that resulted in all of this migration. We just spoke about some of it, but we about to go deeper into it. So, Mary Gaunt, writing about Jamaica in 1922 in her chapter on The White Bondsman, states, to this boiling pot, Cromwell sent 1,000 Irishmen and 1,000 Irish women. I can find nothing but the bare notification that they arrived, and it hardly seems to me that those 2,000 Irish can have helped matters much, whether they were poor convicts or political prisoners. poor convicts or political prisoners, right? At this time, it's being a religion thing. In 1756, Dr. Brown was most emphatic in his statement. Cromwell, having had early intelligence of this conquest, Jamaica, resolved to miss no opportunity of supporting this new acquisition, which now indeed served him as another Siberia. And Edward Long, the historian who was Speaker of the Jamaica House of Assembly in 1768, when writing a few years later, only expressed a commonly accepted opinion in the island when he recorded that the Council of State in England voted that 1,000 girls and as many as young men should be lifted in Ireland and sent over to assist in peopling the colony. Right? So he had people basically being sent over here to people this new colony, Jamaica, right, owned by the English now. He had people being sent over here by force. Right? On May 11, 1655, Jamaica formally capitulated on the representatives of Cromwell, the Lord Protector of England. And as early as the following July 18th, we find a document signed by the field officers of the army in Jamaica entitled Several Conditions to be humbly represented to His Highness, the Lord Protector, and Council concerning the army in America, wherein, after bespeaking necessary equipment and supplies, the request is made that servants from Scotland or elsewhere may be sent to assist in planting. Servants, right? Indentured servants be sent from Scotland, for which the officers out of their pay will make such allowance as His Highness shall think fit, and assign them such proportions of land as His Highness shall direct at the extirpation of their respective terms. Indentured servitude. That is called indentured servitude. This is when people are being told, like, okay, you have to go to America and work the plantations. In exchange, you will be paid and given land. If you do not go, then we are going to lock you up, or worse, kill you. Right? These people were political prisoners, POWs, or most likely poor people just looking for a way out. Right? Some of them. Right? These were the people, right, working on the plantations. They are letting us know right now they were sent to work the plantations. Right? Make a mental note of that, because this is very important, right, to understand the history of Jamaica and this whole African stuff. There is, in the library at Boston College, Newton, Massachusetts, an undated manuscript, presumably in the handwriting of Oliver Cromwell, entitled Certain Queries Concerning His Highness' Interest in the West Indies. The last two paragraphs read as follows: whether His Highness' interest in the West Indies can be carried on without the settling of some course for the constant supplying them with people, whether the weeding the commonwealth of vagabonds, condemned persons, and such are useless and hurtful in war and peace, and a settled course taken for the transporting them to the Indies, and thereby principally supplying Jamaica, is not necessary to be consulted. It may have been in consequence of this memorandum that a letter was dispatched in the name of the Protector to his son Henry, who was Major General in command of the forces in Ireland. While the communication itself is no longer available, its purport is disclosed by the answer to Secretary Thurlow, which is dated September 11, 1655. Sir, I received yours of the 4th instant, and give you many thanks for your relation of Jamaica. And though we have met with some more than ordinary cross province in this undertaking, yet I doubt not but the Lord will smile upon it in the issue. I have endeavored to make whatever improvement I could in the short time allotted me touching the furnishing you with a recruitment of men and a supply of young Irish girls. In order to it, I have advised with the chief officers near me, not having opportunity to make it more public. Neither do I think it convenient until I know your resolutions more particularly. Concerning the young woman, although we must use force in taking them up, yet it being so much for their own good and likely to be of so great advantage to the public, it is not in the least doubted that you may have such number of them as you shall think fit to make use upon this account. Tell me how many young Irish girls you need, right? And I shall make it happen. I shall export no matter how many women and men from this Irish Scottish land to the Americas as I shall see fit. Right, folks, remember 200 years prior to this, before the Inquisition, before 1492, the Moors had that entire area on smash. All right, this is why we get the Wildman theory from. What lands did these Caucasian people take over? Right. A week later, we have the following from the same source. I have little to add to what I write in my last. I shall not need to repeat anything about the girls, not doubting but to answer your expectations to the full in that. And I think it might be like advantage to your affairs there and ours here, if you shall think fit to send 1,500 or 2,000 young boys or of 12 or 14 years of age to the place aforementioned. They were sending young men 12 to 14 years old to the plantations. Child labor. We could well spare them, and they would be of use to you. And who knows, but that it may be a means to make them Englishmen. I mean rather Christians. Let's convert these people. Let's convert these people, because you know they don't follow the same religions. Let's convert them to pagans. Right, on September 25th, we have this reply from Thurlow in the name of the Protector. I return your lordship most humble thanks for the letter I received from you, touching transporting of the Irish girls to Jamaica, and had thought that I might by this post have sent the particular encouragements which my Lord Protector and the Council will give for the better enabling your lordship and the Council of Ireland to have proceeded in that business. But I have been prevented therein by my bodily indisposition, and therefore by this can only be your desire the lordship to proceed as far as you can, till more particular advices can be sent. To this comes the assurance under date of October 9th, 1655. As for the girls, you may be confident to have what you desire in as short a time as you can expect. Here belongs an undated instruction from Thurlow to Henry Cromwell in Ireland. I did hope to have given your lordship an account by this post of the business of causing young wenches and youths in Ireland to be sent to the West Indies, but I could not make things ready. The committee of the council have voted 1,000 girls and as many youths to be taken up for that purpose, and that there be a sum of money for each head allowed for the clothing of them, and other necessaries to the waterside. The answer is dated October 16th. I understand by your last letter that the transportation of 1,000 Irish girls and like number of boys is resolved on by the council. We shall have, upon the receipt of His Highness's pleasure, the number you propound, and more if you think fit. Let's continue. Further instructions were dispatched to Ireland about November 1st, 1655. The ships are which next to go thither to the West Indies will be appointed to take on board them the Irish women or girls. These slave ships carrying Irish women or girls. Irish. This is the 1655s. Who was going to the West Indies? Who? Like, can we make a note of the fact that everything they tell us in history is a lie? Finally, on Christmas Day, 1655, Thurlow writes to Henry Cromwell in Ireland, "We hear nothing from Jamaica, and whilst we do, we are at a stand to sending anything thither. Only some ships are in preparation, and 2 are already gone with such things as we judge most necessary for their substance." Right? They were sending multiple ships. Right? Samuel Ross and Gardner in the History of the Commonwealth and Protectorate, while admitting the foregoing correspondence and quoting further an order in council of October 3rd that 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls should be shipped at Galway in December, at the age fixed in both cases being under 14. Child labor, Negro child labor. Positively asserts, in the end, not a single Irish boy or girl was dispatched across the Atlantic in consequence of this resolution, and adds in a footnote, not only can no such transportation be found in the records, either in London or Dublin, but there is a negative evidence of the absence of any mention of the arrival of so numerous a body by the writers of the voluminous letters which chronicle the position of affairs in Jamaica. So careful are the writers to tell everything that concerns the colony that it is incredible that they should have closed their eyes to such an important importation if it had taken a place, right? It is incredible. They closed their eyes. In this view of flat denial, it behooves us to weigh carefully the evidence adduced from many sources that there was Irish people coming over here, right? They can't find the records. Well, there's a reason for it. Of course, remember, they gotta erase everything. Why would they want you to know that you were a part of these royal families? Again, I asked the question. We learned that Huguenots from France were fleeing to Ireland and Scotland. Again, why would they want you to know that you were a part of these royal families, or even alone let you know that comes from a land that they claim belongs to them? And Ham and Japheth they did their number, man, because they got Shem's kids heads in a bunch, man. Folks don't know what's going on, right? Because of stuff like this, the constant removal and displacement. Right, happened over there, it happened over here. Only place I know for sure that it didn't happen, where them people still belong, still reside till this day, is Africa. Other than South Africa. Yes, they have their forms of oppression, but it's not like ours, right? They tell us that our land doesn't belong to us. That's deep, right? That's deep. They tell us that we come from somewhere that does not belong to us. And then the place that we wouldn't even expect to come from, that's where most folks come from. And then they'd be like, "Oh, how you got Irish blood in your? How you got Irish in your blood?" This is why. Right? Stuff like this. Right? James Anthony Froude, who will never be accused of bias in favor of Catholic Ireland, after speaking of the enlistment of the Irish soldiers in foreign service, remarks, the Catholic priests were more sharply dealt with. At first, such of them did not move of their own accord, were put on board vessels bound for Spain. This proving no deterrent, they were sent to Barbados settlement. Finally, when the numbers arrested were too great to be so provided for, they were removed to 2 islands in the Atlantic, the Isle of Arran and the Isle of Innisbofin, where cabins were built for them, and they were allowed 6 pence a day for their maintenance. In a footnote, he adds, "I cannot pass over this part of my narrative without making any acknowledgement to Mr. Pendergast, to whose personal courtesy I am deeply indebted. and to whose impartiality and candor in his volume on the Cromwellian settlement I can offer no higher praise than by saying that the per usual of it has left on my mind an impression precisely opposite to that of the Mr. Pendergast himself. He write as an Irish patriot, I as an Englishman, but the difference between us is not on the facts but on the opinion to be formed about them. We cannot then better begin the study of our knotty problem than by taking up the evidence adduced by John P. Pendergast, whose impartiality and candor is thus established beyond question. Mr. Pendergast's work, The Cromwellian Settlement in Ireland, appeared in London in 1865, and in Appendix 11, which is entitled Of the Seizing of Widows and Orphans and the Destitute and Transporting them to Barbados, the seizing of widows and orphans in the English plantations, we read, while the government were employed in clearing the ground for the adventurers and soldiers, by making the nobility and gentry yield up their ancient inheritances and withdraw to Connaught, where they could wish the whole nation, they had agents actively employed through Ireland, seizing women, orphans, and the destitute to be transported to Barbados and the English plantations in America, South Carolina, New York. Right? Why you think Central Park? Let's talk about it. An Indian and Irish colony. Right? Who were these Irish folks in Central Park? Right? Let's think back. You know? It was a measure beneficial to Ireland, which was thus relieved of a population that might trample the planters. It was a benefit to the people removed, who might thus be made English and Christians, converting the people. Right? They think that benefited them. Right? It screwed folks over because, man, we're not going to talk about it, but just look at where we are today. I mean, faith in something, have faith in something, but you can't instill faith in a person by using oppressive tactics. Right? That does not work. Right? That creates a certain type of trauma that lasts on for generations. And that's what they was doing. And a great benefit to the West India sugar planters, who desired the men and boys for their bondmen, and the women and Irish girls in a country where they had only maroon women and negresses to solace them. The 13 Years' War from 1641 to 1654, followed by the departure of 40,000 Irish soldiers with the chief nobility and gentry to Spain, had left behind a vast mass of widows and deserted wives with the destitute families. There were plenty of other persons, too, who, as their ancient properties had been confiscated, had no visible means of livelihood. Just as the kings of Spain sent over his agents to treat with the government for the Irish swordsmen, the merchants of Bristol had agents treating with it for women, men, and girls to be sent to the sugar plantations in the West Indies. The commissioners for Ireland gave them orders upon the governors of garrisons to deliver to them prisoners of war, upon the keepers of galls for offenders in custody, upon masters of workhouses for the destitute in their care, who were of an age to labor, or if women were marriageable and not past breeding, and gave directions to all in authority to seize those who had no visible means of livelihood, and deliver them to these agents of the Bristol sugar merchants, an execution of which latter direction Ireland must have exhibited scenes in every part like the slave hunts of Africa. Oh wow, Ireland was so bad it was almost looking like the slave hunting in Africa. That's how bad the situation was in Ireland. So there's a correlation. The same way they treated them people over there is the same way they treated folks in Ireland. Like I said, it was either get down or lay down or die. straight up. How many girls of gentle birth must have been caught and hurried to the private prisons of these men catchers? None can tell. But at last the evil became too shocking and notorious, particularly when these dealers in Irish flesh began to seize the daughters and children of the English themselves and to force them on board their slave ships. Then indeed the orders at the end of 4 years were revoked. Like they ended up capturing their own folks and making them jump ship. And forcing them on the ship. Right, most likely holding them for ransom because they had wealth. Right, not too different from the Irish folks. Obviously, if you had white people on the boat as slaves, when you gather in a bunch of Negroes, they would stand out. There's something that allowed for them to fit in. They just had wealth and they were being held for ransom. In January 1654, the governors of Carlow, Kilkenny, Clonmel, Wexford, Ross, and Waterford had orders to arrest and deliver to Captain Thomas Morgan, Dudley North, and John Johnson, English merchants, all wanderers, men and women, and such Irish within their precincts as should not prove they had such settled course of industry as yielded them a means of their own to maintain them, all such children as were in hospitals or workhouses, all prisoners, men and women, to be transported to the West Indies. Right, cooking. All of these Irish folks being sent to the islands. Right, the governors were to guard the prisoners to the ports of shipping, but the prisoners were to be provided for and maintained by the said contractors, and none to be discharged except by the order under the hand and seal of the governor ordering the arrest. It is easy to imagine the deeds done under such a power. On the 22nd December of the same year, orders were issued prohibiting all the shipping in any harbor in Ireland bound for Barbados and other English plantations from weighing anchor until searched, in order that any persons found to have been seized without warrant should be delivered. Right, trying to save folks. All measures, however, were vain to prevent the most cruel captures as long as these English slave dealers had recourse to Ireland. In the course of 4 years, they had seized and shipped about 6,400 Irish men and women, boys and maidens. When on the 4th of March, 1655, all orders were revoked. These men catchers employed persons, so runs the order, to delude poor people by false pretenses and to buy places, and thence they forced them on board their ships. The persons employed had so much apiece for all deluded, and for the money's sake they were found to have enticed and forced women from their children and husbands, children from their parents, who maintained them at school, and they had not only dealt with so the Irish, but also with the English, which was last the true cause probably of the commissioners for Ireland putting an end to these proceedings. This point will recur later. Prendergast continues, yet not quite an end. In 1655, Admiral Penn added Jamaica to the Empire of England, and colonists being wanted, the Lord Protector applied to the Lord Henry Cromwell, then Major General of the forces in Ireland, to engage 1,500 of the soldiers of the army in Ireland to go thither as planters, and to secure 1,000 young Irish girls to be sent there also. These people in the army, right, they were the indentured servants. Henry Cromwell answered that there would be no difficulty, only that force must be used in taking them. Force must be used in taking them. And he suggested the addition of from 1,500 to 2,000 boys of from 12 to 14 years of age. We could well spare them, he adds, and they might be of use to you, and who knows it, but it might be a means to make them Englishmen. I mean Christians. The numbers finally fixed were 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls to sail from Galway in October 1655. The boys as bondmen, probably, and the girls to be bound to by other ties to the English soldiers in Jamaica. Right, so if you got family in the islands, man, and they tell you that they had a grandma that came over here with a white man or something like that, if the ancestry go back like that, right, this could be the result of that transportation. Right, but they don't know it of having Irish ancestry. They would only know it as African because of the skin color. If you black, you African, according to some people. This is the thing, man. And people got to ditch that, because how you go connect to something that don't belong to you? To know where you go, you got to know where you come from. So if you Irish, you Irish. Like, that's just what that is. Right? It's okay. Right? That's just what that is. A specific instance cited by Pendergast is the following. Daniel Connery, a gentleman of Clare, was sentenced in Morrison's prisons to banishment in 1657 by Colonel Henry Inglesby for harboring a priest. This gentleman has a wife and 12 children. His wife fell sick and died in poverty. 3 of his daughters, most beautiful girls, were transported to the West Indies to an island called Barbados. And there, if they are alive, they are in miserable slavery. They are in miserable slavery. Young girls enslaved on the Barbadian and Jamaican islands. Again, we learned that these slaves were being transported also to South Carolina or different plantations here in America. So they was bouncing all over. Right, as regards priests in particular, Pendergast records, in consequence of the great increase of priests towards the close of the year 1655, a general arrest by the justices of the peace was ordered, under which in April 1655, the prisons in every part of Ireland seem to have been filled to overflowing. On 3rd of May, the governors of the respective precincts were ordered to send them with sufficient guards to Carrickfergus, to be there put aboard the ships as should sail with the first opportunity for the Barbados. One may imagine the pains of this toilsome journey by the petition of them. Paul Cahan, an aged priest, apprehended at Maryborough and sent to Phillipstown on the way to Carrickfergus, there fell desperately sick, and being also extremely aged, was in danger of perishing in restraint for want of friends and the means of relief. On 27th of August 1656, the commissioners, having ascertained the truth of this petition, they ordered him a 6 pence a day during his sickness, and their order directed that it should be continued to him to his travel and thence to Carrickfergus, in order to his transportation to Barbados. So if he was sick or not, nigga was still going. Right along with your folks, you was going to be sent to the plantations. At Carrickfergus, Colonel Cooper, who was in charge of the prison, was authorized to dispense with transportation in the case of those who would renounce the Pope's supremacy and frequent the Protestant meetings and no other. Right? Dispense with transportation in the case of those who would renounce the Pope's supremacy and frequent the Protestant meetings and no other. Same get down or lay down. If you was going against the Pope, you had to go. Right? If further legal evidence were required, we have it among the acts of the Second Parliament of the Protectorate under date of June 26, 1657, where we find an act for the attainder of the rebels in Ireland, wherein it is provided that those who fail to transplant themselves into Connaught or Clare within 6 months of the publication of act in Ireland should be attainted to high treason, and after conviction are to be sent into America or some parts beyond the seas. In pursuance of the said sentence of banishment, which the said Lord Deputy and Council of the Chief Governor of Governors for the time being are hereby authorized and required to put in execution accordingly. Those thus banished to return into any part of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland without license under the Great Seal of England are to suffer the pains of death as felons by virtue of this act without benefit of clergy. Woo! If you going against the Pope, you got to go. Man, we're going to pause right there. We're going to pick this up in another one. Because it's late. I got to get up for bed in the morning. For work in the morning. That's how you know I'm tired. We just gave y'all so much heat, though. Who were the slaves coming to the Caribbean islands? And if so, then who were the people? If we can answer that, then who were the people coming from Barbados and Jamaica to South Carolina? Right? What's the ancestries of these people? Come on, man. Connect the dots. That's the game we play every time we do this research. We play the game of connect the dots. Right? I can't wait to continue going into this one, man. It's going to be a nice one. Because we're going to really get into more facts and details about what was going on in Ireland and Scotland. Right? This whole respect the Pope's wishes. Right? People wasn't having that. The Moors, they wasn't having that. Right? They was not having that. And a lot of them were being forced to come over here. I'm telling y'all, man. This stuff's so interesting, man. You wouldn't believe the things that you actually find out, right? And it's crazy because I still argue with people about this stuff till this day. I'm about to really just stop talking to people about it. Like, watch my videos. That's it, because we really do the research, and I, like I just showed folks, right? Like I just presented, right? It gave us all of the information that we actually needed to know to be able to develop our own opinions based off the facts. So whence the Black Irish of Jamaica? Who were these swarthy Scottish and French settlers of the West Indies? These Black Europeans in America. Right? They couldn't have all been Africans, man. People have identities. And it's important to get in tune with those. Because you discover more than what you may think. And I rest my case right there. If you'd enjoyed this one, stay in tune for part 2, man. Like, comment, and subscribe. Click that notification bell to stay up to date on all content. And stay plugged in like an extension cord. And if you haven't yet, make sure you go check out our very first short story. Out now. On Amazon. Our very first short story. Out now on Amazon. And I'm going to show y'all, right? Make sure y'all go check it out. Because when I say it's beautiful, it's extremely beautiful. Queen Khalifa and the Lost Legacy of Lemuria. Chapter 1. Chapter 2 coming real soon. Many more short stories coming soon. Grab these for your children. Give them a chance to learn and educate themselves on true history. And with that being said, love y'all. Have a good night. Peace and blessings.